Metro on WDET Detroit Public Radio. I'm Tia Graham. It's midsummer already, and we've recently experienced a heat wave that had our air conditioning cranked. But a lot of Detroit residents don't have AC, which made shade a vital source of relief from the heat. We've also seen a handful of severe thunderstorms that have brought down branches, limbs, and even whole trees. But how is the city of Detroit's tree canopy doing in the face of climate change? To find out, the Metro's David Lyons spoke with Lawrence Law, urban forester and partnership coordinator for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources.
We've just experienced a serious heat wave. It probably reminded some people just how important shade is during a Michigan summer. Can you talk a little bit about what the heat island effect is?
Yeah, so the heat island effect, essentially we have all these hard body area, impervious pavement and all that around the city, and the sun comes out, heats it up in the summer, and then in the evening that heat continues to radiate off, creating this giant heat bubble that kind of just makes it so we're using more energy to cool our homes. It's hotter, it's more unpleasant versus areas of high tree canopy. Trees love sunlight. They need it to make their food, and shade really is a premium. So that shade kind of reduces that heat effect. Temperatures are 10 degrees cooler underneath trees, and it's important that we plant trees just so we have that resistance to the heat.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, 10 degrees during a heat wave, when you're seeing temperatures of heat index of over 100 degrees, that 10 degrees can mean, for some people, life and death, or it can mean extreme discomfort or some discomfort. It can mean illness or not. So regarding climate change and the adaptation that we have to make, whether we like it or not, our governments, our elected officials, our departments of natural resources like you're with, we have to maintain the tree canopy we have in order to actually keep it, because of course these trees will eventually die, and some die every day and come down, sometimes in storms. How's Detroit doing with climate change adaptation and the tree canopy?
Detroit is doing, I would say, mixed results. I say on the whole, quite good. We have Green in Detroit that this past spring has planted over 1,800 new trees across the city, and a lot of those are fantastic species that for climate change adaptation, for new hardiness zones that we're going to be getting into in the future, those trees are perfect. What we have that's been here for the past 60, 70 years, those trees are going to be proportionally more affected by climate change and going to see more insect and disease issues. So that's the part in areas where we have a lot of these older trees that do get affected by pests and disease. Those pests and disease are going to take advantage of the hotter weather, hotter climate, and just spread, essentially.
So there is a connection between pests and climate change acceleration, I guess. And the reason I ask is we've heard about the spotted lanternfly as an invasive pest, and I'm curious if that's kind of like a double whammy. We have climate change where we're seeing more extreme weather. We're seeing sometimes long bouts without rain and then really heavy rain. We're seeing heavy winds. How does this extreme weather and climate change combined with more invasive species like spotted lanternfly, how does that interaction really work? Like, why is it so much easier for the lanternfly, for example, to kind of take root here?
So the good news is the lanternfly isn't, it's not something that's super dangerous. It's not the tree killer. It's just more of a public nuisance. But insects, they work on their life cycles are much shorter. So the warmer it is, the more chance that they have to lay eggs, grow to maturity, lay more eggs, and so on and so forth. And if you go down south, you might have that cycle maybe twice or three times a year, versus up here where it's colder, you don't get that. Their metabolism works based off of temperature, and they just don't handle it well. So the warmer temperatures are, the more opening they have to complete their full life cycle and reproduce. That's the biggest issue.
So when you mention the Greening of Detroit planted 800 trees in the past year, and those are species that are really set up well for climate change for the future, are these species of tree that are doing especially well down south where we see a warmer climate. We see pests that can do multiple life cycles in a year and all of that. What kind of species of trees are we talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these are species that, like, you'll see in southern Ohio and stuff like that, that deal with temperatures that we're probably going to have to deal with in 10, 20 years from now. And instead of 800, it was 1,800. So it's a lot of trees.
1,800.
Yeah, and stuff like black gum. Black gum is usually seen in southeast United States. It's usually in weather areas. It's a fantastic tree. It's my favorite tree. It gets that red leaf just like a maple. And it's going to be something that I'll probably suspect is going to be planted more as our maples kind of falter a little bit more in this hot weather because they don't like heat, versus the black gum, which has the same ornamental characteristics but the adaptation to the climate.
I'm glad you mentioned the maple because I know that the silver maple is a tree that has been planted in Detroit and Metro Detroit all over the place. It's in a lot of right-of-ways. It's in a lot of parks, and they're really beautiful trees. But I know that they're also more brittle and more susceptible to wind damage and that. But there's a nostalgia that we have in Michigan for maple trees and some other species. But maples especially, they're like home to us. They represent home. We've seen these trees for generations. Sometimes the same tree has been outside of the same family home for multiple generations. How do you kind of approach the human culture side of our kind of legacy of trees that we felt like, hey, these are our trees. These are the ones that we surround ourselves with, that we live with. How do you kind of convince people, hey, you should embrace the black gum. This could be the next generation of tree for your kids and their grandkids?
I try and embrace it in a sense that it's not like maples are going to go away. It's just harder for them to thrive. We'll still have them around. They're still nice. They're still massive. And if you have a good reason, there's nothing wrong with taking down the tree. It's important that what's planted there in its place is taken care of to get real big. And a lot of people love their maples. Like, it's to an absurd degree where most communities in Michigan are over half represented by maples in their canopy. But we have other things out there, and it makes our communities more resilient. And if you look in the past where our communities were defined by elm and ash, and then we had Dutch elm disease and emerald ash borer, take those out of the canopy, it's been redefined time and time again within a relatively small generations. Like, we're talking like 10, 20 years each time. So It does change. It will change. And we just have to make the best decisions for what's going to be good for the future and future generations.
So there's a recent map, a shade map that came out. It was from American Forest, a nonprofit, and it showed that Detroit had kind of a big problem. 90% of the bus stops had inadequate shade. And that makes sense if you kind of look on the face of it, because you think bus stops are on the road, surrounded by sidewalks. In the city, there's very little shade cover there. But I do wonder, though, where is there a solution that we can draw from this new report and map that was released? I mean, are there species of tree that could be planted and in a relatively short amount of time provide the kind of shade that would be required at a bus stop to keep people cool when they're waiting to get to work or school or to visit someone or go shopping on a hot day in the summer?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of it is all the soil volume and infrastructure around it is to have a space that can make sure a tree survives, let alone thrives in that space to grow, to provide shade. And that usually is where it gets expensive, it gets complicated, but we're getting better at it. It's getting less expensive as we understand what we need to do as knowledge becomes more available. And the city of Detroit relatively recently has actually been planting a lot of, it's called tulip tree or tulip poplar. And it grows quite fast, grows quite large, grows tall, and it's a fantastic shade tree. And I know with the city, I'm pretty sure with Parks and Grounds, Barry Burton has been a champion of that species. And you've probably seen it around the city and not even known.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll keep an eye out for the tulip poplars the next time I'm out. I saw a lot of trees go in around the time of the NFL draft. I'm not sure if it was directly connected to the draft, but I drive on I-94 every single day to and from work, and I noticed a lot of trees go in there. Some of them have survived, and others haven't. I'm curious how much impact, if any, that you know of, there has been from things like the NFL draft or other high-profile events, maybe the Grand Prix, where it's drawing people to the city. There's a reason for beautification, but that also brings with it the benefits of having tree canopy to last decades on.
Yeah, and a lot of this brand new trees have been planted because Detroit's had such a spotlight on it. Next year in 2026, Detroit is hosting the International Society of Arboriculture Conference, in which we're going to actually show that off. And we have some really great sites around the city that show huge successes and also some failures that we've learned from. So Detroit has done things that a lot of cities really haven't and has bounced back and been amazing. And not every single tree is going to live, but we're learning from that and we're planning. And the wonderful staff with the city and with greening have been really receptive to that. And just going back to the drawing board with any failures and being like, hey, this is where we stopped short. This is where we got to be. And a lot of that is mostly just outside factors like the heat, drought, stuff like that. It's usually lack of water for the most part. But yeah, it's been kind of amazing how much has been planted in Detroit and how good of quality it is after not a lot is happening for a good amount of time before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess there's a lot to look forward to if you're somebody who enjoys shade and you live or visit the city of Detroit or work here. You can expect more trees to take the place of those that are coming down in the coming years. If you're just joining us, my guest is Lawrence Law, Urban Forester and Partnership Coordinator for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. So, Lawrence, we've been talking about governmental organizations and how they can manage and do manage our tree canopy here that we all kind of share. But I also want to talk about what people can do in their own lives. A lot of people might have a home with a small yard. Maybe they have a large yard. There's a right-of-way in front of their house even. For someone who's tree-minded, they want to have a healthy tree or two or three in the area where they live. What's the first tip you have for somebody who's thinking, you know what, I really do need a tree finally in my yard. I'm getting blasted by the sun, and I think it's the right thing to do. So what's the first step you give people?
My first step is to find a good place for it. I am a relatively new homeowner. I bought my house in the past year, and I had 0 trees on my property, and I definitely want something. I got a bungalow, so it gets really hot, and I need that shade. I'm not going to have that shade for a couple of years at least, but I planted a tree in my right-of-way because I could fit it there. I called Miss Dig, 811 Miss Dig. I made sure there wasn't anything underneath it, got it planted. It's doing pretty well. I'm watering it regularly during the summer when it's hot out here, and just making sure, hey, I'm not going to fertilize this for the first couple of years. I'm going to make sure that it's planted properly, that it's at proper height. I could see the root flare. A lot of this stuff is in the document that if you just Google the USDA Tree Owners Manual, it's my number one go-to that I give people for their yards, for any landscape contractors. Anyone could understand it. It's really easy, and it's a perfect document for knowing, hey, should I plant a tree? Should I put this tree here? How do I prune it? How do I plant it? All that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And what tree did you plant? What species?
It's not Michigan native. I know. It's usually you should prioritize Michigan natives, but I actually have a Katsura tree, and it has heart-shaped leaves. It smells like peaches when it blossoms in the spring. It's native to Japan, but it's a fantastic little tree, and it looks gorgeous. So I kind of love it.
Okay, that's cool. I'm going to have to look into those. One of the things about planting a tree and that decision of where to plant it, I think is also about when to plant it. And a lot of times people have more maybe a little bit more motivation to do yard work and landscaping during the summer because they think, hey, it's the summer months. I'm mowing the lawn a lot. I'm doing a lot of weeding and gardening. I should put a tree in now. But the heat of the summer is maybe not the best time to plant a tree. Can you talk about when people should really plan to plant a tree?
Yeah, people should really plan early spring, ideally before the trees, they have buds. When those buds break, you want to get them before those buds start to break and it starts to grow, or late fall, like October-ish, before the ground freezes, but it's moist out. So it's all about controlling moisture. I've seen a couple of projects of some private property around me, but landscapers planted stuff in the middle of summer last year or the year before, and those trees look stringy and are kind of struggling. I know they haven't gotten a lot of water. So definitely, if you are forced to plant in the summer, make sure it's watered. You want to reduce the amount of stress that tree has by making sure it's watered, making sure it's not damaged. Don't prune it. Don't over-fertilize it. Just water and love. So,
and I know a lot of times people think, I really wish I had planted this tree 20 years ago, but I'm going to do it today anyways. And the next step is, okay, how large of a tree am I going to buy? Because you can purchase bare root saplings that are a couple of feet tall, but people can also buy trees that have been started in pots, and they can also buy the ball and burlap trees, which do come a little bit bigger, but a lot bigger root ball to try and get in the ground. And those come with different growth rates, I know. So can you talk about that decision between something like a bare root sapling versus a ball and burlap that you would put in that's bigger to start, but may not take off as quickly?
Yeah, bare root they're the easiest to transport, but they're the most difficult to handle in terms of if those roots dry out, that tree is practically dead. You need to stake it down for sure because it doesn't have like that root ball, that big soil ball holding it down with weight. I like bare root. Usually those are a lot smaller though. I use those more for like natural projects. Containerized trees are a nice happy medium. They're relatively easy to transport. They're a pretty good price. The biggest issue is the containers are always way too small. You have girdling roots. So you're going to need to prune off those girdling roots before you plant it in the ground. And I like to say, treat it like a pineapple. Shave off the sides, the bottom, and just put that thing in the hole. And then you also should stake it because, once again, it's not super big or heavy, and it's probably going to be blown around by the wind a little bit, especially when it gets into fall. Ball and burlap are great. I personally enjoy the 1.5 to 2.5 inch in diameter trees. Those are the ones that are my sweet spot that I recommend. I've heard a lot of people planting a lot of 3 to 4 inch, which are massive. You need help with that for sure. But I like the 1.5 to 2.5 inch. It's a good enough price bang for your buck for your tree. It's a decent size, and you have that big root ball there. Just take the cage off, snip the cage off, peel off as much burlap as you can, and just make sure you excavate that root collar. So like the root collar is where it starts to flare out. Just excavate down to that so you know where to properly plant it, because if that gets buried, you're going to have girdling roots again and tree problems in the future. And next thing you know, you spent $500 to pay $2,000 10 years from now to remove it. So.
Speaking of removing trees, you know, it's one thing to plant trees, and it's really nice to watch them grow. But something that's kind of sad for a lot of people is to see a tree come down, especially one that they've really cared for and appreciated for many years. But sometimes it does have to happen. How do people know if a tree is sick or if it's too old and it's become a danger? How do they know that they need to have a tree removed? What should they look out for? Some particular signs?
I would say look out for stress symptoms, such as if the leaves are very, very yellow and it's like summer, or if they're falling, and especially if it's an oak, it could be oak wilt then. Usually if something really jumps out at you of the tree, it's probably something you should get checked out. It's most of the time, it's not usually insects, but it can be. or a disease, which it can be, but you could get those tested by sending in like $20 to the MSU Plant and Pest Diagnostics Lab, and they're usually the best ones to get stuff tested, and they'll tell you what you got to do. But if the tree crown itself is heavily damaged or dying or dead, I'd say about like 60-70%, and it just doesn't look good, and it's stress branching, which is branching from the base of the tree or through the trunk or something like that, and you've seen it around. I know you have if you walked around the city. Those definitely should be removed and replaced, and it's a shame, but it will be replaced with something better and maybe more suitable for the site. Maybe it's just something weird with the site. All sorts of factors could be in play there.
Lawrence Law is an urban forester for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. This story is part of WDET's ongoing series, the Detroit Tree Canopy Project. You can find more stories about the health and management of Metro Detroit's trees at WDET.org. And if you want to listen back or share a conversation you heard on the Metro, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. You can also go to WDET.org. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Have a great day.